was not looked well upon. Yes, the kings had music for them in their darbars, and the Maulavis were always criticizing them for it. But then music as a cultured activity sanctioned for the people, this virtually ceases to be an urban phenomena in medieval India. So music goes into the ashramas, into the Sufi khanakas, into the other religious places. And hence Indian music largely turned to bhakti. And Indian theatre also became dominantly a theatre of the Bhagavat nature, of the Vaishnava nature. I explained to you that it could not have been possible to have many theatrical performances of the Jain and the Buddhist tradition, for the very simple reason that the viharas and the mathas of the Jains also were not financed anymore, and they were largely wiped out. And hence, this kind of theatre, telling the stories for these communities, also did not survive. So it was largely,
Leela quality is not there in Jain and Buddha stories.
and also the Leela quality is very restricted. It is because the story is limited, and there is not much possibility of retelling the story. You cannot have too many versions of it. You cannot create your own versions of it. And hence, it is in the Bhagavat tradition that the performing arts, namely theatrical and musical arts, found a patronage. So, from the Dasharupakas, then we come to the present form through this historical analysis. At this point, would you like to make some questions? Yes. Here is a wonderful question. Can you just speak it into the mic? What exactly is classical, huh? Yes. So, she has asked very pertinent two questions. What is classical? Question number one. And number two, is traditional and classical the same? All right. Well, let me tell you again that classical is also a European term. The Natya says that there are three levels of performance: Uttam, Madhyam and Adham. That which is very low level performance, and then that which is medium level, and that which is great performance. And it gives all these art forms. It never says that this is the high art form and this is the low art form. Now, many people have tried to give the term Margi and Desi as classical and non-classical or folk or regional. Now, there is some slight degree of truth in it, because Deshiya means something which is found only in a certain region. Well, according to Natya Shastra description, all these art forms are Deshiya because they are Deshaja. And yet they are not, because all of them observe the 108 Karanas, all of them have the Angaharas according to the common tradition. All of them have so many steps. The steps are done in a different style. The style is Deshaja, but the art form is an all India art form. There were certain things which were perhaps done in certain regions only. And in any art form, you will make embellishments and additions which would be very peculiar to that region in order to create distinctiveness, in order to accommodate the creativity of the people of that region. But Margi and Desi meant something else. Certain art forms which became very old and which were reserved or got reserved only for spiritual practice, they were called Margi. Yes, so the Marga there meant was spiritual Marga. For instance, certain Shaivite songs by 11th, 12th century, they become Margi. And there are many other songs which are, this is exactly the same thing which happened once into Samagan and Gandharva. That one kind of music was then reserved for recitation of Vedas, and that was called Samagan. And another music which was free and developing was called Gandharva. Right? So when certain art forms were reserved for spiritual purpose, or let us say not reserved but just got restricted to that use, including dance forms, there must have been dance form. Yes, they could be, they were then given the name Margi. I'll give you an example. Today, most people wear saris only on religious occasions, especially in North India. You don't wear a sari, women don't wear saris for everyday use. So sari is Margi and jeans are Deshi. I mean, this is how the process takes place. I'm sure that if things go on as they are going, then after 20 years, sari would be rented. Women would be renting sari for 2 hours to wear it, just for the time of marriage, as men are renting kurtas. Yeah.
So I think the word classical itself is a little tricky.
Very much.
Very clear that we have to discuss about the dance form through Margi and Desi only. I think so, sir, because classical is very
I would go to the even more liberal approach that you just call dance forms by the names that they have and say good performance or bad performance. Good Bharatnatyam, we recognize a dance form called Bharatnatyam. And if we have to encourage Bharatnatyam, then let us give money for it. Let us not then first categorize it as classical and then it becomes eligible for a Sangeet Natak Academy grant. If it is a very good dance form, even if it is Lavani, even if it is Ovi, These are Maharashtra dance form. Or even if it is, this singing form in Haryana, which they call Ragini. I don't see why it should not be called classical or why it should not be given patronage. This categorization that this is folk and this is classical is just irrelevant. It has no sense. If we want to preserve something, encourage something, we know the name of that thing, then let us give an ashraya to it. Let us give something to it. Let us encourage it. So I think any good art form is classical. I'm sure they'll say that they should be, just as there is an award through Bharatnatyam and you get the Sangeet Natak Academy Award or fellowship, I think a few years later they'll say there should be an award for Michael Jackson dance. Actually, it has become not a discussion of quality. It has become an issue of lobbies. So we should put our attention to what is worthwhile preserving and what is, for instance, now there is a big debate. Should a sportsman be given Bharat Ratna or not? I'm digressing from my main topic, but my question is, those who are able to make millions, do they need a Bharat Ratna? And those who spend lifetimes in poverty, doing some of these great art forms, or doing some deep studies of traditional vidyas, in great poverty, should they not get Bharat Ratna? Should those who make millions like Sachin Tendulkar, should they get Bharat Ratna? I mean, there has to be a logic to whole thing. I'm sure that very soon they will ask for a Bharat Ratna for Amitabh Bachchan. We seem to have lost the whole concept as to who is to be given patronage and for what. All these awards are honorable awards. They are not moneyed awards, because when you get a Sangeet Natak Academy Award, I think you only get 40,000 rupees and maybe some insurance policy for your health. And what is 40,000 rupees? You can buy a bicycle, that's all. You can't even buy a car. If you're really honoring somebody with a lifetime of dedication, then he or she should be given at least 10 lakhs or 20 lakhs or 30 or 50 lakhs. When an IAS officer retires today, he gets a gratuity of 30 lakhs. So there is something seriously wrong in this classification of what is classical, what is to be awarded. Basically, this idea as to what is classical is only a method of giving patronage, recognition. And in contemporary India, we all have to seriously think about this. Yeah, take the microphone, please. Yeah. Hello? The microphone, could you just make it work? The microphone. Or just ask the question and I'll repeat it. Yeah, I'll repeat it so that it gets recorded. Huh? Yeah, yeah. 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 All right. Huh?
There is a ritualistic art form in Kerala that is called as Mudiyettu.
Udiyetta.
Mudiyettu.
Mudiyetta. Okay. Huh. All right. All right. Now, just pay attention to what has been asked. Now, she says there is a art form, Mudiyetta, in Kerala, and it has become popular, but it has changed in its nature. It's lost its value, it has lost its primary purpose. Yes, this is happening to many forms. I'll give you another example. For instance, take the example of a Gujarati devotional dance called Garba. Where is that Gujarati girl who was sitting here? Oh, there she is. So she will tell you, well, she perhaps can't tell you because she is so young, but I have lived in Gujarat in early 80s, and so I know what was happening 35 years ago. Garba was seriously a dance performed during the 10 sacred days to Devi. It was a religious ritual. Men and women danced around the image of Devi, and it was done very seriously, just as in Kerala you still are doing during the what is called that no, the art form no, this is not Terukutu, this yeah, Teyyam. Teyyam. Right. Now, Teyyam is still done very seriously. There is a whole ritual to it, and people go there to take the blessings of the Teyyam and or the Teyyams that come. But look what's happened to Garba. Garba is dating season. It's meant now for young boys and girls to go and have a good time. And the Devi, I know, is still somewhere there, perhaps under the stage or somewhere. And there is nothing spiritual about the songs. And all the songs which are sung there are sung in the most exciting, erotic, rock music style. There are tickets to Garba. So Garba is no longer a spiritual art form. This is happening pretty much to the Bengali Devi Puja, the puja for 10 days which goes on in Bengal pretty much the same time. So transformation of earlier serious art forms into something very commercial, very ordinary, and no longer art has taken place. I am sure this may have happened earlier also in history, but now it is happening at a very wide scale. And it has happened with Madhubani painting. Now, you cannot blame those who brought Madhubani paintings to light or the art forms like even Kudiyattam to light, because they had the best of intentions. We only have to blame ourselves who cheapened them. Here it is again an issue of associating the sacred with the art. Because the sacred was associated with art. Music was sacred, dance was sacred. Therefore, there was some sort of a break on making it too commercial. And as there has been a great turn away from the sacred in our national life, because now we are a secular state, and secularism means materialism. All our definitions of culture are around money. And therefore the ethical values, the spiritual values, and the deeper values that prescribe a transcendence, rising above yourself, these values are suffering. So I think here it is not just an issue of techniques and languages and art forms. It's an essential issue of having values. Natyashastra is all the time making you aware of the highest values, because Natyashastra is Pancham Ved. And I think it is with this idea of Pancham Ved that we have to contest those people who come round to you today and say, well, I want to show what my audience wants to see. You know, there are many people, you can see them on television, they are all the time, when you say, why did you show such cheap scenes in your film? Then they'll say, well, I am only showing what my audience wants to see. It's a very devious way of saying that I have the power to lower the taste of my audience and I'm going to do it. And I don't give a damn. So unless you raise your voice as young artists and say that no, we want to keep the realm of the sacred close to us as artists, you will not be able to save your art from cheapening. Sacred does not mean that you fall into religious orthodoxy. It certainly doesn't mean that, but that a value of transcending everyday material concerns is cultivated. You wanted a question.
Sir, is there a reference about the male actor in Natyashastra? Because whenever there is about performance, we are connecting with the courtesans and all those, only about with the female person. Because we have a history clearly that in Kudiyattam, there was Kudiyattam and Kathakali, we have Nandiyar, Shakya, and then Yakshagana, if you go, there are pandits in Sanskrit and Kannada, they used to perform. In Tamil Nadu, Telugu is related to say Vedalar group, who are capable of singing like that. But why there is no reference about the male actor? Because the male character is also in so many Sanskrit and proper plays. Who were
Well,
performing?
I did not read out those portions where they describe who is going to act and what would be the role of the male actor and the female actor and the interchange. But yes, all this is given in very good detail in the chapters. And as we saw in the in the very first chapter, when Bharat Muni performed the first play, it was all male actors and it was a flop. And so Brahma said that please bring in some women so that the play is a success. Now, the Indian theatre always has had women and men, both. And it has had always a tradition, which is described here, of men acting as female roles and women acting as male roles, both. So this was part of the art. It was considered a challenge for the actor, Nata, a male to perform a female role and a female to perform a male role. Now this has happened for various reasons. This is also true, that this freedom was manipulated. Sometimes they would not teach women. Sometimes they would ask men to perform female roles. This has happened here and there in history. But on the whole, the tradition has been absolutely using both the genders. I mean, it's useless to use the word liberal, because If there was no restriction, then where was the liberality? Men and women actors. However, there is one thing which is to be noted, that the performer, it seems historically very early in India, they were degraded to the Shudra status. They did not have the Savarna status. So this is also a point. Now, why this happened, how this happened, this is a long question. But one of the factors, one of the slightly uncomfortable or darker side of the art of performance has been this. This has been a feature of several ancient cultures. For instance, in Greece also, the professional actor was not a respectable person. So in ancient India also, the professional actor was also not a Kulina, right? A Shailusha or a Bharata was not a Kulin. So maybe even the learned among them were not Kulin or were not Savarnas. That is why when it was suggested that Bharat Muni was a Brahmin, I opposed the idea. I said, well, who knows? He may have been a Shudra. And once you attain the status of a Muni, you throw your earlier life and your Varna categories far behind. So the question is not a very relevant question whether he was of this caste or that caste. But yes, for the average actor, it is true that they did not have the Savarna status, they had the lower class status. But they were prized, they were valued, and the better ones among them were rich also. And they had great respect. So this contradiction has existed as far as the social status of the performer is concerned. Now, having gone through the four vrittis and the relationship, we come to the 19th, go back rather to the 19th chapter and see what it has to tell us regarding the formation of what is a play. The important thing on which the 19th chapter concentrates is about the structure of this story. Now, I am going to talk about this part very briefly because this is something which does not concern you so much as to what was the story, in how many parts was it divided, how it was approached, and what were the different technical terms used for it. I shall just give you a very simple definition that the story or the plot in ancient times in the context of theatre was called itivritta. That is the story. And the story had to match the Dasharupaka. So those Rupakas which were full length plays like Natak and Samavaka and Prakarana, they would have as many as 10 acts or 7 acts, or at least 5 acts. Plays which were action plays like Samavakar, they could have only 3 acts. Some plays could have only 1 act, like Vithi or like Vyayog, or some would not even be divided into act, like the Bhand. So, the development of the story was largely divided into what the hero wanted, then he made an effort to do something, there were certain obstructions for him in his doing, then a stage came when it appeared to him that the goal is very near, and finally there was the attainment of the goal. So all action of the story was divided into these 5 parts. Very briefly, this is how the story was dealt with. Then there were other stages and descriptions as to which part would correspond to which kind of action, and what you will put, and what kind of dance form you would use, where, etc. And that is not so much of a concern for you as dance student, because you are not doing deep literary studies of the structure of a play. So we now jump on to the 22nd chapter. This 22nd chapter is a dancer's chapter. It is entirely about Abhinay. And it says, what are the different activities that you have to show? What is the best kind of Abhinay? Jeshtha Abhinay. What is an Alankar? How are the bhavas to be shown? What is a bhava? What is a hava? What is a hela? What is a leela? What is vilas? Now these are various aspects of Kaishiki Vritti, romantic. Because you will not have leela and vilas, vibram. You will not have kilikinchitam, mottayatam, bibbok, all these different postures which are taken. Postures not in the sense of karan, but expressions rather, which are used in dance. I am sure that you are taught most of these when you are taught certain numbers, and when you are taught Mukhabhinay and Angabhinay and Hastabhinay, but you are not taught the names of these because that tradition has been largely lost and needs to be revived, but it is continuing in this. There is also in this chapter a situation of what the Nayaka does at what time. And the 22nd chapter is where you have the 8 kinds of Nayakas, Ashtanayaka. And you know the Nayakas, I am sure you have read about something. The Vasak Sajja, Virahato Utkanthita, Swadhina Bhartika. Have you done some bit of it in your study? I am sure, because without a knowledge of this and a background of this, you will not be able to perform any Ashtapadi. So here you have these Ashtanayaka, Proshit, Bhartika, etc. In other words, this chapter, 22nd chapter, is largely dedicated to Shringara Abhinay, and it gives us an account of what is going to happen. Now, they also say that what are the great states of Viraha? What happens in love? And if love is unrequited, Viraha. The first stage is Abhilasha. The second is Anusmriti, when you think of the lover. The third is Gunakirtanam, when you talk about the great qualities of the beloved. Udvega, when you feel strong emotion for that. Vilap, and when you cannot get close to the lover, then there is Vilap. Keshi Mathanamudaram. Ramaya Maya Saha Madana Manoratha Bhavitaya Savikaram. This is a Vilap, isn't it? Radhika telling the Sakhi that I want to go close to Krishna. So, Sakhi he, Keshi Mathanamudaram, Ramaya Maya Saha. Please take me so that I can play with him. Unmad, then great passion. And when all this is unrequited, there is so much sorrow, then it becomes a disease, Vyadhi. And when Vyadhi or disease goes deeper, then you start losing the energy in your body. You cannot move around. You lie on bed, and that is finally Jadata. And if still there is no solution, then there is Marana. So, the Natyashastra describes how this is to be enacted. Which particular movement, which particular activity is to be performed. And this I am sure I need not talk about, because you would be practically learning a lot of this. The 23rd chapter goes on to describe the Aharya Abhinay, among other things. And then it also describes the various kinds of, the 24th chapter also describes the various kinds of characters that existed in ancient society and who had to be depicted there. So there was the high level Naika, then there were different characters various forms of ascetics, the Shishyas, the Gurus, the teachers. And if you were to describe what happened in a royal family, then there were different kinds of women of different status. So Mahadevi is the eldest of the wives of the king. Then there is Devi, Swamini, Sthapita, Bhogini, and women like Shilpa Karika. Then there were dancing women in the harem, Nartaki, etc. And then, so various characters are described. In the 25th chapter, there is a description of how to describe the seasons. Because drama would definitely portray certain seasonal activity. If you are going to perform, let us say, Swapnavasav Dattam, then it's very important there, because the seasons are depicted in great detail in that play. And this chapter also describes certain kinds of abhinaya and how different characters of different status would perform actions of various kinds, like how would a child speak. So if you're going to enact and do the part of a child, then you would talk about it. The 26th chapter is largely about various women characters again, and how a female character can act a male character and vice versa. So this is an answer to your question. If you wish to go deeply into it, look at the 26th chapter. Look at this Parabhava Praveshanam, Sukumar Prayoga, Keval Purush Prayogyam, Stribhi. And then they make references as to when the play should be performed, at what time it should not be performed. Like in Sandhya Kal, in lunch time, there should be a proper break. Sandhya and Bhojan Kale Natya Pratishedha. What are the best kind of characters? And then, who are the best audience? And who are the best judges? The judges are called Prashnika. Because there were competitions also, there were prizes also, and the productions were graded. So the 27th chapter ends up giving the definition of these. Do you have any questions at this point? Would you like to ask questions? If you remember, we talked about success, siddhi. So what is this siddhi? If a play is to succeed, what do we mean by siddhi? In this 27th chapter, we deal with this question, Siddhinam tu pravakshayami lakshanam natakashrayam. Yasmat prayogah sarvoayam siddhyartham sampradarshita. So they say there are two kinds of siddhis. Siddhistu duvidha gyeya vag manoanga samudbhava daivi cha manushi chaiva nanabhava samuttita. Now they say there is manushi siddhi. How do they describe that? Dashanga manushi siddhir. Daivi tu duvidha smrita. Dvividha smrita. The Daivi is only of two kinds. And then they go on to describe what are the 10 kinds of Manushi Siddhi. Well, Manushi Siddhi is the play is successful at the material level. That the audience appreciate it. That you get a response from the audience. That they clap, that they say again, sadhu, sadhu. They ask for certain portions to be repeated. There is a lot of once more. So this is a proof of siddhi. And also there are no vignas. That there are no vignas because you have made lapses, like forgetting a dialogue, or forgetting a dance or a step, or that there are no vignas, that an enemy producer not making a sabotage, that he may do something, he may put some kind of a mirchi in the clothes of the dancer or the nut, and then something happens. So they say if all the vignas are eliminated, if the performance is going on in the smoothest possible manner, then that is considered to be a Manushi Siddhi. If all this is not happening, all the obstructions are not What is the Devi Siddhi? Now I can understand if there is a lot of clapping, my Manushi Siddhi has happened. If the king is happy and he announces a prize, or whosoever is the patron who has called me, if a temple has called me and if the temple management gives me prizes, then it is Manushi Siddhi. But Devi Siddhi, is God going to descend on the rung and tell me I have succeeded? How will I discover? Ya bhava atishaya upeta sattva yukta tathaiva cha saprekshakaistu kartavya daivi siddhi prayogataha. So, when there is great sattvic prayog, when you are doing sattvic abhinay and the audience is enthralled, the audience has come to a point of stillness, when the audience is stunned, na shabdo yatra na kshobho na cha utpata nidarshanam sampurnata cha rangasya daivi siddhi tu sasmrata. This is the proof. The proof that devatas are now happy, that they have accepted my performance. How? Through a particular condition in the audience. What is that? Na shabdo yatra. So when they are clapping, Manushi Siddhi. But na shabdo yatra na kshobho. And they are quiet not because they are tired. Na kshobho na cha utpata nidarshanam. They forget to make any mischief. They may have come with a view to laugh, to create an obstruction, because one way of obstructing is to clap, clap, clap at the wrong time. You know, this happens a lot in Urdu mushairas. Wah, wah, wah. You know, he just says, he reads his first part of the sher, of the phrase, you know, ye na thi hamari kismat, and wah, 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 the whole. So you are not allowing him to read further. This is a vigna. So somebody who may have come, or a few people who may have come with the idea of creating an obstruction, but when they really see, they are vismita. They are stunned. Awesome for them, as the Americans say these days. Na shabdo yatra nakshobho na cha utpata nidarshanam sampurnata cha rangasya daivi siddhistu sasmrita. Daivi cha manushi siddhir esha mayodita. So there is only one line in the Natyasastra in defining what is Daivi Siddhi. However, although Daivi Siddhi is described just in one line, once a very highly learned scholar of Natyasastra asked me this question. He said, only one line describing Daivi Siddhi. Then how can you assert that this is sacred theatre? That the idea of theatre is associated with pleasing the divinity, with pleasing the gods, that it is Panchama Veda. How can you say? Because Daivi Siddhi is only the audience is stunned. The audience is stunned. Why? Because they have reached a state of Satvodreka. Remember what we were doing when we were discussing Bhattanaya? Remember what is the high stage of sadharanikarana? That there is a upashamana, a subjugation of the rajas and the tamas. It is that subjugation of the rajas and tamas that brings the state of stillness, absolute stillness, the state of being stunned in the audience. And so if the audience has reached that level of awareness, then they have reached closer to divinity. And that is a sign of God's being pleased, of theatre elevating you, and of theatre being sacred and religious. When they say that all these activities are actually sacred, there are so many other sayings other than the Natyasastra. For instance, it is said that Gandharvam tu dhanadi nirapeksha yajanam. Gandharv or music is a yajan. It is a Vedic sacrifice which does not need money. So it doesn't need money, but it is a sacrifice, it is a yajan. And natayagya is a word which is used here and there, and I have shown you the closeness of natya with the process of yajya, and how it even developed as an art form from the earlier art forms of Vedic rituals. So, siddhi, Daivi siddhi, which exists and which pleases the devatas, after all you have brought all these devatas into the Ranga Griha and you have done a nyas of them, that he is going to sit here, that such and such devata is going to sit in this part of Ranga Bhumi, Ranga theatre building, the other devata is going to guard this, the other is going to guard this. I didn't read out those descriptions, but in the Ranga Pujana section they are all there. So if you have placed all those devatas there and they are guarding, then they have to be pleased. You're going to offer them something. What is the sign of their being pleased? That the audience attain an absolute stillness.
For me, I am getting a picture that it is when we see the darshana, we go to the still. That's what for me.
You are right.
Audience are still. If there is a darshana of Paramatma and the greatest thing is still. So in that way, I think
You are right. You are absolutely correct that this stambhana, the stillness, means that you have seen something alaukik. You have seen something Brahmanand Sahodar. That's exactly what Bhattanayak is saying. So, stillness in the audience is a lakshana of the divinity giving a touch to the performance, or the performance rising to the level of divinity. So, the 27th chapter brings us to the close of the various kinds of angik, vachik, sattvic activities, and the chapters 28 onwards are on the kind of music which is to be employed. So we'll end here for the day. Tomorrow, when we start, do come up with certain questions, and let those questions be closely related to your possible expansion of the art of Bharatnatyam into creative forms, something which you might want to do as young artists. Thank you very much. questions for tomorrow? All right. Thank you.